Once a homeless veteran with nothing to lose, Marcus Sullivan now guards a ranch that holds America's secrets. But a shadowy foreign alliance threatens to destroy everything he's built. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Marcus Sullivan's hands trembled as he counted his last $20. 2 crumpled $10 bills. The remnants of a life shattered by 3 tours in Afghanistan. At 34, the former staff sergeant, once a decorated combat medic, lived out of a rusted pickup truck, haunted by nightmares of blood-soaked sand and mortar fire. Invisible to the society he'd sacrificed everything for, he drifted through Cheyenne's gray streets, a ghost in a world that had moved on. Then came an unexpected lifeline. An inheritance of a derelict ranch in Wyoming's Clearwater Valley, a forgotten patch of land no one else wanted. Beneath its crumbling barn, Marcus would uncover a secret chamber holding artifacts that could rewrite American history and a Cold War conspiracy that would thrust him into a deadly game where his survival and the nation's future hung in the balance. The Cheyenne Veterans Affairs Office was a fluorescent-lit purgatory, its walls plastered with faded posters about benefits Marcus had never received. He sat across from Ms. Carter, a counselor whose tired eyes betrayed her empathy. Housing assistance is backlogged 3 weeks, maybe 4, she said, her voice soft but firm. The system's overwhelmed, Marcus. I'm sorry. He nodded, the familiar numbness settling like dust. Nightmares had sabotaged every job since his 2019 discharge. The last, a construction gig, ended 6 months ago when a jackhammer's roar sent him sprawling, convinced he was back in Kandahar, dodging shrapnel. His crew had stared, some pitying, others annoyed, as he'd gathered his tools and walked away, pride burning in his chest. Now his world fit in a duffel bag. A change of clothes, a worn photo of his old unit, and a bronze star he couldn't bear to look at. As the office closed, Ms. Carter handed him an envelope. This came through our mail service, she said, her brow furrowing at the return address. Pearson & Sons, attorneys at law, Clearwater Valley, Wyoming. Marcus tucked it into his jacket, expecting another bill he couldn't pay. Maybe a notice that his storage unit, holding what little he hadn't sold, had been auctioned off. Back in his truck, parked in a lot where he'd sleep tonight, he tore it open. The letter inside was a shock. Dear Mr. Sullivan, we regret to inform you of the passing of your great-uncle Walter Sullivan on March 17, 2024. As his sole surviving relative, you have inherited his property, including a ranch and all contents thereof, located in Clearwater Valley, Wyoming. Please contact our office to arrange the transfer of the deed. Marcus read it 3 times, the words blurring. Walter Sullivan. His father had mentioned him once, a reclusive uncle who'd cut ties after a family feud in the 70s. Marcus had been a kid, too young to care about estranged relatives. Now, at rock bottom, this stranger had left him a ranch. His rational mind warned of a crumbling shack with back taxes, but desperation painted a different picture, a roof, walls, a place to breathe. With $15 in gas, he called the lawyer, Jim Pearson. It's legit, Pearson's gravelly voice assured him. No debts, no liens. Walter paid cash, lived off the grid. The ranch hasn't run since the 80s, and Clearwater's barely a town, gas station, diner, that's it. Nobody's clamoring for the place. Marcus scribbled the address, his pulse quickening. It was a gamble, but he had nothing left to lose. 2 days later, his truck rattled down a dirt road 15 miles from Clearwater Valley, the Rockies looming in the distance. The Sullivan Ranch emerged like a relic. Rusted iron gates, a 2-story house with peeling paint, a barn faded to gray, and fields choked with weeds. Silence hit him like a wave. No traffic, no voices, just wind whispering through tall grass and the cry of a distant hawk. For a man whose sleep was fractured by urban noise triggering his hypervigilance, the quiet was a revelation, almost sacred. The house key, mailed by Pearson, turned with a groan. Inside, dust motes danced in shafts of sunlight piercing grimy windows. The furniture was old but sturdy. A leather couch, an oak dining table, mismatched chairs. The fridge hummed, a surprise. Electricity still flowed, likely from the solar panels he'd glimpsed outside. Walter's life was etched in meticulous order. Books aligned by height on shelves, pantry cans in perfect rows, clothes in the bedroom closet sorted by color. Framed photos lined the walls. Wyoming landscapes. A stern man with Marcus's sharp jawline, likely Walter, staring into the distance. A study held a desk covered with maps, some stamped with faded government seals, and a leather journal logging daily weather, wildlife, and cryptic notes. Visitor at 0300, no ID. Perimeter secure. Exhausted, Marcus unrolled his sleeping bag on the couch. The silence enveloped him, and for the first time in years, he slept without nightmares, the ranch a fortress against his demons. Morning brought golden light and a realization that hit like a punch: he had a home. The house was structurally sound, a roof intact, foundation solid. The plumbing sputtered but delivered cold, clear water. The pantry held months of canned goods, and a locked cabinet revealed a small arsenal: hunting rifles, a shotgun, an M1911 pistol, all oiled and stored with ample ammunition. Walter had been a man prepared for anything. By noon, the Wyoming sun hung high, casting sharp shadows across the Sullivan Ranch's weathered expanse. Marcus Sullivan, his lean frame hunched over a broom, swept dust from the master bedroom's hardwood floor, each stroke kicking up clouds that danced in slanted light. The house, a relic of his late great-uncle Walter's solitary life, creaked with every gust, its peeling paint and sagging porch whispering neglect. Marcus, at 34, was a stranger to this place, yet its silence, unbroken by the urban clamor that fueled his nightmares, felt like a fragile truce. 3 tours in Afghanistan had left him with scars both visible and buried, a jagged line across his left forearm from shrapnel, and memories of Kandahar's chaos that woke him gasping, heart-pounding, in the cab of his rusted pickup truck. He paused, wiping sweat from his brow, and glanced at the duffel bag in the corner. Inside, alongside a change of clothes and a faded photo of his old unit, lay his M1911 pistol, a military-issue keepsake he hadn't touched since his discharge in 2019. The weight of it grounded him, a reminder of the staff sergeant he'd been. Decorated, respected, a combat medic who'd stitched wounds under fire. Now, reduced to $20 and a truck that coughed more than it ran, he was a ghost, invisible to the society he'd bled for. The letter from Jim Pearson, a gruff Clearwater Valley lawyer, had been a lifeline. Walter Sullivan, an estranged great-uncle Marcus barely recalled, had died, leaving him this ranch. It was a gamble, likely a crumbling shack with debts, but desperation saw shelter, a chance to claw back from the abyss. The rumble of an approaching truck shattered the quiet. Marcus's combat instincts flared, his hand twitching toward the duffel before he caught himself. He forced calm, stepping onto the porch as a dusty Ford pulled up to the rusted iron gate. A woman stepped out, mid-50s, her silver-streaked hair pulled into a practical ponytail. She wore faded jeans, scuffed boots, and a red flannel shirt rolled up at the sleeves, her stride cautious yet deliberate, like someone accustomed to navigating tense encounters without escalating them. Her face, weathered by sun and time, held sharp eyes that missed nothing, scanning Marcus from his worn jacket to the broom in his hand. "You're Walter's nephew," she called, stopping short of the gate, her voice carrying over the wind. "Ellen Hayes, neighbor to the north." Marcus descended the porch steps, meeting her gaze. "Marcus Sullivan," he said, aware of her shrewd appraisal, as if she were cataloging him for later reference. Her handshake was firm, calloused, the grip of someone who worked the land. "Heard Walter passed," Ellen said, her eyes flicking to the ranch's dilapidated sprawl. The house's chipped paint, the barn's faded gray, the fields choked with thistles. "Didn't think anyone'd claim this place. It's been empty since he died, 6 months back." "Never met him," Marcus admitted, the words rawer than intended. "Got the deed last week. Lawyer tracked me down through the VA." Something flickered in Ellen's eyes, surprise, maybe suspicion, gone as quickly as it came. "Planning to stay?" Her tone was neutral, but her posture stiffened as if his answer carried weight. Marcus hesitated, the honesty slipping out before he could stop it. No place else to go. The admission hung between them, heavy with the truth of his last year, sleeping in Walmart parking lots, scraping by on odd jobs until flashbacks cost him even those. The ranch, for all its decay, was his only anchor. Ellen nodded slowly, her expression softening, though her eyes remained guarded. "Land's tough out here, a rocky soil, harsh winters. But it's workable if you know it." Walter made do, though he wasn't much for farming. Her gaze drifted to the barn, its silhouette looming against the Rockies' jagged outline. Kept to himself, spent most of his time in there. Government work, he said. Folks in Clearwater learned not to ask questions. Marcus followed her gaze, curiosity sparking. Government work? Ellen's lips pressed into a thin line as if weighing how much to reveal. He'd come and go at odd hours, sometimes gone for weeks. Trucks would show up now and then, unmarked, city plates. Never stayed long. She shrugged, but the gesture felt forced. Walter was a private man. Didn't like company, didn't give explanations. The barn's secrecy tugged at Marcus, his military vigilance sharpening. Walter's house, with its orderly books and aligned cans, spoke of a disciplined mind, but the barn felt different, guarded, purposeful. He ever mention what he was working on? Marcus asked, keeping his tone casual. Ellen's eyes narrowed, a fleeting hardness before she softened again. Not to me. Like I said, folks didn't ask. She reached into her pocket, pulling out a scrap of paper and a pencil stub. Scribbling a number, she handed it over. Cell service is patchy, towers are spotty this far out. But it works sometimes. Call if you need supplies, help with the generator, anything. Clearwater's 15 miles east, gas station, general store, diner if you're desperate. Not much else since the mill closed. Marcus took the paper, noting the neat, precise handwriting. Appreciate it, he said, pocketing it. I'll manage. Ellen studied him a moment longer, as if searching for something, trust, perhaps, or a sign he was more than he seemed. Take care, Marcus, she said, turning back to her truck. This place, it's got a way of pulling you in. Her words carried an edge, a warning wrapped in neighborly concern. As her truck kicked up dust down the dirt road, Marcus stood rooted, her parting glance lingering in his mind. She knew more than she'd let on, and the barn was the key. He crossed the yard, the barn's weathered facade drawing him like a magnet. Its gray planks, once red, sagged under decades of wind and sun, but the structure stood solid, its foundation unyielding. The main doors were secured with a heavy padlock, the metal rusted but intact, as if daring intruders to try. Marcus fished out Pearson's keyring, its jangle loud in the stillness. The main lock didn't budge, but a side door, half hidden by overgrown sagebrush, clicked open with a smaller key. He stepped inside, the air cool and thick with dust, carrying scents of old wood, oil, and something metallic. The barn's interior was a time capsule, its shadows cloaking relics of a working ranch long abandoned. Rusty farm tools, pitchforks, shovels, a scythe hung on pegs, their handles worn smooth. Workbenches lined one wall, cluttered with jars of screws, coiled wire, and a toolbox stamped with a faded U.S. Army insignia. A tractor, its tires flat, sat in a corner, draped in cobwebs. Unlike the house's lived-in warmth, the barn radiated secrecy, its contents arranged with a precision that felt deliberate, as if meant to conceal rather than reveal. Marcus's flashlight beam swept the space, catching glints of metal and the faint outline of tire tracks in the dust, recent, too clean for 6 months of neglect. Someone had been here since Walter's death. His pulse quickened, years of military training kicking in. He moved silently, checking corners, listening for sounds beyond the wind's low moan. At the barn's rear, a small office stood, its door ajar, windows covered with heavy blackout blinds. Inside, the air was stale, heavy with the scent of old paper and electronics. A military-issue metal desk dominated the space, its surface bare except for a single pen, perfectly centered. Locked filing cabinets lined one wall, their drawers unyielding under Marcus's tug. A ham radio, its dials dark, sat in a corner, wires neatly bundled. The walls were a mosaic of maps U.S. Eastern Europe, Russia, China, each marked with colored pins and notes in precise, almost obsessive handwriting. One map, centered on Wyoming, had a red pin at the ranch's exact location, labeled primary site. Another, of D.C., marked federal buildings with cryptic codes, E17, W4. Marcus's breath caught. This wasn't a farmer's office. It was a command center, a nerve hub for something far beyond Clearwater Valley. His boot scuffed something metallic, a ring embedded in the floor, nearly flush with the worn planks. He knelt, tracing its edge, heart pounding. A trapdoor, concealed with care. This was no storage for hay or tools, it was a gateway to Walter's secrets. The realization hit like a shockwave. Whatever Walter had been doing, it was bigger than Marcus had imagined, and the barn held answers that could change everything. He hesitated, the M1911's weight of temptation in his duffel across the yard. Years of combat had taught him to trust his instincts, and every nerve screamed caution. The tire tracks, Ellen's guarded words, the maps, they pointed to a truth Walter had hidden, perhaps even from his neighbor. Marcus grabbed his flashlight from the house, its beam a lifeline as he returned to the barn. The trapdoor's ring was cold under his fingers, unyielding at first, then giving way with a groan of rusted hinges. A steep staircase descended into darkness, cool air rising like a breath from the earth. It carried scents of paper, metal, and something faintly chemical like preservatives or old film. The darkness below wasn't empty, it pulsed with purpose, daring him to step forward. Marcus stood at the threshold, flashlight in hand, the beam trembling slightly. Afghanistan had taught him to face the unknown, tunnels, ambushes, moments where hesitation meant death. But this was different. The ranch, his last refuge, was no longer just shelter, it was a puzzle, and the trapdoor was its heart. Ellen's warning echoed, "This place has a way of pulling you in." He took a breath, steadying himself, and descended, each step echoing in the silence, drawing him deeper into Walter's hidden world. Marcus Sullivan's flashlight beam cut through the darkness at the bottom of the barn's trapdoor staircase, revealing a concrete chamber that seemed to pulse with secrets. The space, a precise 30 feet square, was a surreal hybrid of archive, laboratory, and war room, its air cool and heavy with the metallic tang of old machinery and the faint, musty scent of aged paper. His boots echoed softly on the polished floor, each step amplifying the weight of his discovery. Metal shelves lined the walls, their surfaces gleaming under layers of dust, each holding dozens of meticulously labeled storage boxes, their edges worn but intact. Glass display cases stood like sentinels, encasing artifacts that defied immediate understanding, jagged metal fragments etched with strange glyphs, vials of shimmering liquid that caught the light, and reels of microfilm coiled like sleeping snakes. At the chamber's heart, a heavy oak desk dominated, its surface cluttered with papers anchored by brass paperweights stamped with presidential seals, their embossed eagles glinting ominously. Framed photographs hung above, frozen moments in time. A younger Walter Sullivan, his jaw sharp and eyes resolute, shaking hands with Eisenhower, Kennedy, Nixon, and Ford, their expressions a mix of formality and guarded trust. Marcus's heart pounded, his breath shallow in the oppressive silence. This wasn't a farmer's hideaway or a survivalist's bunker, it was a vault of truths too dangerous for the world above. His fingers, calloused from years of gripping rifles and tools, trembled as he approached a box on the nearest shelf, its label handwritten in precise script, Operation Nightshade, 1963, Cosmic Top Secret. The words sent a chill down his spine, evoking memories of military briefings where top secret meant lives on the line. He lifted the lid, dust swirling, and found a leather portfolio inside, its cover embossed with the presidential seal. With reverence, he opened it, revealing a trove of documents, yellowed pages typed in crisp courier font, black and white photographs of stern men in suits, and blueprints for an underground facility, its chambers sprawling like a labyrinth. The header on the top document read, "Eyes Only, Cosmic Top Secret." Marcus's pulse quickened. These weren't just classified files. They were the kind of secrets that could topple governments, rewrite history, or ignite wars. He scanned a page, catching phrases like nuclear contingency, executive override, and civilian exclusion. Operation Nightshade, it seemed, was a shadow protocol, a plan to wield unimaginable power beyond the reach of Congress or the public. He moved to another shelf, his flashlight casting long shadows that danced across the concrete. More boxes beckoned, each a Pandora's box of America's hidden past, spanning administrations from Truman to Reagan. One held audio tapes, their spools labeled with dates and cryptic codes. Oval Office, 1962, Cuban Crisis. Camp David, 1974, Resignation Talks. Another contained personal effects, each item a relic of power. JFK's fountain pen, its nib stained with faded ink. Nixon's monogrammed notepad, its pages filled with jagged handwriting. Eisenhower's cufflinks, engraved with a subtle DD. Marcus's breath caught as he opened a case labeled Project Orion, Recovered Materials, 1959. Inside, small metal components gleamed, irregular, almost organic, as if forged by no human hand. Vials of unidentified liquid shimmered under the light, their contents swirling faintly while microfilm reels bore labels like Site-47 Analysis and Non-Terrestrial Origins. The implications hit him like a mortar blast. Walter hadn't just served the government. He'd been a keeper of its darkest truths, a silent guardian of secrets that could shatter the nation's illusions. The chamber felt alive, its silence not empty but heavy with purpose, as if the walls themselves were waiting for someone to claim their burden. Marcus's mind reeled, torn between awe and dread. He was a nobody, a 34-year-old veteran reduced to living in his truck, his life eroded by nightmares of Kandahar's blood-soaked sand. Yet here he stood in a vault that held the keys to history's shadows, chosen by a great uncle he'd never met. Why him? The question gnawed, but there was no time to dwell. His combat instincts, honed over 3 tours in Afghanistan, urged him to act, to secure what he could before the world intruded. He selected 3 items, each chosen for its weight in his gut: the Nightshade portfolio, its leather cool against his skin, a journal of White House transcripts, its pages dense with verbatim conversations, and a flash drive labeled Orion Index. Its modern incongruity stark among the analog relics. He slipped them into his cargo pockets, their bulk reassuring yet oppressive, like carrying live grenades. As he turned to leave, the chamber's silence seemed to whisper, urging him to stay, to unearth more. But his training kicked in, secure the objective, move out. He climbed the stairs, each step heavier than the last, the trapdoor's hinges creaking as he sealed it behind him. Back in the barn, the air felt thinner, the dusty tools and workbenches mundane after the chamber's revelations. Marcus's heart still raced, his mind struggling to process the magnitude of what he'd found. Walter Sullivan, the reclusive uncle his father had barely mentioned, had been no mere government worker. He'd been a shadow historian, a collector of truths too volatile for daylight. Marcus's own life, his medals, his scars, his homelessness, felt trivial in comparison, yet the ranch, the chamber, had chosen him. The thought was both exhilarating and terrifying, a call to a purpose he wasn't sure he could fulfill. The rumble of engines shattered the quiet, a low growl that set his nerves alight. Through a cracked window in the barn's weathered wall, Marcus saw 3 black SUVs speeding up the dirt road, dust clouds billowing in their wake. His combat instincts screamed. This wasn't a coincidence. His discovery had triggered something. A silent alarm, a tripwire left by Walter to guard his secrets. These weren't locals checking on a new neighbor or surveyors scoping the land. The vehicles moved with purpose, their tinted windows hiding their occupants' intent. Marcus slipped behind a stack of moldering hay bales, their musty scent grounding him as he peered through a gap in the barn's slats. The SUVs stopped near the house, and 4 men in dark suits emerged, their movements precise, almost choreographed, like a special forces unit on a mission. The leader, silver-haired and broad-shouldered, carried an air of command, his eyes scanning the ranch with predatory focus. He barked orders, his voice clipped and authoritative. Standard search protocol. Documents, storage devices. Sullivan was old school, paper and physical media. Perimeter first, then structures. Move. Marcus's truck, parked conspicuously by the house, betrayed his presence. Running would scream guilt, painting a target on his back, but staying risked everything. The artifacts in his pockets felt like burning coals, their secrets too heavy to carry yet too dangerous to abandon. His phone buzzed in his jacket, the vibration loud in the barn's stillness. Ellen Hayes, the neighbor who'd visited earlier. The ringtone, though muted, pierced the quiet, and one of the agents, a wiry man with a shaved head, snapped his gaze toward the barn, hand twitching toward his waistband. Marcus had seconds to decide. He silenced the phone, his thumb fumbling in the dark, and weighed his options. Hiding was futile, the agents were too professional, their search too systematic. Fighting was suicide 4 against 1, and he hadn't fired a weapon since his last tour. His only play was to confront them, to buy time and gauge their intent. He took a steadying breath, channeling the calm he'd used before patrols in Kandahar, and stepped out from behind the bales, hands raised to show he was unarmed. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" he called, his voice steady but laced with faint confusion, the tone of a puzzled homeowner. The silver-haired leader turned, his piercing blue eyes locking onto Marcus like a hawk spotting prey. He reached into his jacket and flashed a badge, its DoD seal glinting in the fading sunlight. "Daniel Blackwood, Department of Defense, Special Projects Division. We're here about your great-uncle, Walter Sullivan, classified materials unaccounted for since his retirement." Marcus met Blackwood's gaze, his face a mask of neutrality despite the adrenaline flooding his veins. "Never met him," he said truthfully. "Inherited this place last week. Just getting settled." Blackwood's expression didn't soften, his scrutiny relentless. Walter was Secret Service 1958 to 1984, then DoD until 2001. He had access to Presidents Eisenhower to Reagan. "We have reason to believe sensitive items are stored on this property." His tone was matter-of-fact, but the weight behind it was unmistakable, a warning wrapped in protocol. The Wyoming dusk settled over the Sullivan Ranch like a heavy shroud, the horizon swallowing the last threads of sunlight. Marcus Sullivan stood in the kitchen of the weathered ranch house, his calloused hands gripping the edge of the counter, the faint aroma of brewed coffee mingling with the musty scent of a home untouched for months. His heart still raced from the discovery beneath the barn, a concrete chamber filled with artifacts that could only be described as dangerous, a leather portfolio stamped with a presidential seal, a journal of White House transcripts, a flash drive labeled Orion Index. Each item, now hidden in the deep pockets of his cargo pants, felt like a live grenade, its pin half-pulled. The silence of the ranch, once a balm to his war-torn nerves, now pulsed with menace, as if the land itself knew what he'd uncovered. A sudden shout from the barn shattered the quiet. "Sir, you need to see this." The words, sharp and urgent, confirmed Marcus's worst fear. Blackwood's team had found the trapdoor. His pulse spiked, a familiar adrenaline surge from his days as a combat medic in Afghanistan, where split-second decisions meant life or death. He forced his movements to stay deliberate, pouring coffee into chipped mugs with a steadiness that belied the storm in his mind. The artifacts could be evidence of a truth the world needed or a death sentence for anyone who held them. Agent Davis, a broad-shouldered man with a buzz cut and eyes that missed nothing, leaned against the doorway, his casual posture a lie. Marcus felt the weight of scrutiny, as if Davis could see the secrets burning holes in his pockets. Blackwood, the silver-haired leader of the Department of Defense team, had arrived an hour ago with 3 black SUVs, their tires kicking up dust clouds that still lingered in the still air. His credentials, flashed with practiced ease, marked him as Special Projects Division, but his piercing gaze and clipped commands suggested something deeper, something that made Marcus's combat instincts scream, "This isn't routine." The team's tactical precision, the way they fanned out to secure the ranch, echoed the raids Marcus had run in Kandahar, methodical, relentless, and always with a hidden objective. Blackwood's claim that they were here for unaccounted classified materials tied to Walter Sullivan, Marcus's late great-uncle, felt like a half-truth, a cover for something far more dangerous. Marcus's thoughts churned as he set the coffee pot down, its metallic clink loud in the tense silence. Walter, a man Marcus had never met, had left him this ranch, a crumbling relic in Clearwater Valley, Wyoming, bought for $500 and ignored by the world. The lawyer, Jim Pearson, had called it a worthless plot, but the chamber beneath the barn told a different story. Photos of Walter with presidents Eisenhower, Kennedy, Nixon, documents stamped cosmic top secret, artifacts like JFK's pen and Nixon's notepad, these weren't the relics of a reclusive farmer. They were the work of a man who'd stood at the heart of power, collecting truths too volatile to see daylight. And now Marcus, a 34-year-old veteran reduced to $20 and a rusted pickup, was caught in the crosshairs of whatever Walter had been guarding. He needed an ally, someone who knew the ranch, knew Walter. Ellen Hayes, the neighbor who'd visited earlier, was his only lead. Her shrewd eyes and guarded words, "Walter worked in that barn, government stuff, folks didn't ask," hinted at knowledge beyond a farmer's curiosity. Marcus pulled out his phone, its cracked screen glowing faintly, and dialed her number, keeping his voice light despite the agent's presence. "Ellen, it's Marcus," he said, leaning against the counter, the mug warm in his hand. "Got some government folks here looking into Walter's old papers. Routine, but they'll be around a bit." Ellen's response was measured, her tone catching the subtext like a seasoned operative. "I'll swing by in an hour with some blackberry pie," she said, her voice warm but edged with purpose. Government men get hungry, too. The promise of dessert was a lie, a code Marcus instinctively understood. She was coming, and not just to play neighbor. Davis shifted, his hand resting near his holster, a subtle reminder of control. Marcus nodded at him, offering a mug. "Coffee?" Davis accepted with a grunt. But his eyes never left Marcus, who sipped his own drink, the bitter taste grounding him. The artifacts pressed against his thigh, their weight a constant reminder of the line he was walking. If Blackwood's team found them, Marcus could be branded a traitor, or worse, disappear into a black site. But handing them over blindly was no better. Walter had hidden these for a reason, and Marcus's gut told him that reason was tied to the kind of power that didn't forgive exposure. The kitchen door creaked as Blackwood returned, his face a mask of controlled tension, the kind Marcus had seen on officers before a high-stakes op. "Your uncle maintained an unauthorized archive," Blackwood said, his voice low, each word precise. Highly classified materials, some still active. Have you been in that room? Marcus met his gaze, years of facing down superiors in the field steadying him. Found it this afternoon, he admitted, gauging Blackwood's reaction for any tell. Opened a couple boxes, saw some photos, old stuff, government seals. Didn't make sense to me. The lie was partial. He'd understood enough to know the chamber held secrets that could rewrite history, but admitting that would be suicide. Blackwood's eyes narrowed, searching for cracks in Marcus's story. We'll debrief you tomorrow, he said finally, his tone leaving no room for negotiation. A retrieval team will secure the contents. Agents Miller and Johnson will stay to guard the site. He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a near whisper, the weight of authority unmistakable. National Security, Staff Sergeant. You understand. The use of his rank hit like a jab. They'd run his military record, 3 tours, Bronze Star, honorable discharge marred by PTSD that had left him unemployable. Blackwood was signaling, we know who you are and we're watching. Marcus nodded, his face impassive. Understood, sir. The word sir tasted bitter, a reflex from a life he'd left behind, but it bought him space to maneuver. Blackwood and Davis left, their SUVs rumbling into the night, leaving Miller and Johnson behind. The 2 agents took positions outside, one near the barn, the other by the house, their silhouettes stark against the moonlit fields. Marcus watched them through the kitchen window, his mind mapping their patrol patterns like he'd once mapped enemy movements. Miller, older, moved with a veteran's economy, his eyes scanning the perimeter. Johnson, younger, fidgeted, less disciplined, a potential weak point. To ease their suspicion, Marcus cooked a simple meal from Walter's stocked pantry. Canned chili, heated on the ancient stove, its coils glowing red. He carried 2 plates outside, approaching the agents with a disarming smile. Figured you'd be here a while, he said, offering the food. Gets cold out here at night. Miller grunted, accepting the plate with a nod, his guard unchanged. Johnson, though, relaxed slightly, his shoulders loosening as he took a bite. Thanks, he said, his voice betraying a hint of gratitude. This is a special assignment straight from the director. Not our usual gig. Miller shot him a sharp look, a silent order to shut up, and Johnson's mouth snapped closed, his eyes darting to the ground. Marcus kept his expression neutral, filing away the slip, straight from the director. This wasn't a routine sweep. Someone high up was rattled by Walter's archive. He made small talk about the ranch's isolation, then retreated to the house, the night air cool against his skin. Inside, he locked the bedroom door, his hands trembling as he pulled the artifacts from his pockets. The portfolio, its leather cracked but intact, held documents labeled Operation Nightshade, 1963, Cosmic Top Secret. A quick glance earlier had revealed plans for a nuclear protocol bypassing Congress, its margins filled with Walter's precise handwriting. The journal contained transcripts of Nixon's private talks, words that could topple legacies. The flash drive, small enough to vanish in his palm, was a mystery, likely an index to the chamber's secrets, but without a computer, it was useless. Marcus hid them in a loose floorboard beneath the bed, a trick he'd learned from his father, who'd stashed cash during lean years. The act felt futile. If Blackwood's team searched thoroughly, they'd find everything. Sleep was impossible. Marcus lay on the sagging mattress, the M1911 within reach, its cold steel a reminder of the life he'd tried to leave behind. Afghanistan had taught him to trust his instincts, and they were screaming now. The ranch wasn't just a windfall. It was a trap set decades ago by a man he'd never known. Walter's journal entries, visitors at 0300, no ID, suggested he'd been watched, maybe hunted. Had his death, a supposed heart attack, been natural? The question gnawed, each tick of the bedroom clock amplifying his unease. At midnight, a truck's headlights pierced the darkness, pulling Marcus to the window. Ellen Hayes stepped out, a covered dish in her hands, her silver-streaked hair glinting under the porch light. Miller and Johnson straightened, their hands near their weapons, but Ellen's warm smile disarmed them. Brought some pie, she called, her voice carrying the easy cadence of a neighbor. Figured you boys might need a break. She stepped inside, her eyes sweeping the room, missing nothing, the tension in Marcus's stance, the faint bulge of the M1911 under his jacket. As she set the pie on the counter, she leaned close, her voice dropping to a whisper while she chatted loudly about crop yields. Check your pocket, she murmured, slipping a folded note into his hand. Her fingers brushed his, steady and deliberate, a signal of alliance. Ellen stayed only minutes, her banter with the agents flawless, deflecting their suspicion. As her truck rumbled away, Marcus retreated to the bathroom, the only room without windows, and unfolded the note. In neat handwriting, it read, "Walter trusted no one. Neither should you. 2 a.m. backfield by the split pine. Come alone." The words sent a shiver down his spine, not from fear but from clarity. Ellen knew Walter's world and she was pulling him into it. Marcus checked his watch, 11:45 p.m. The split pine, a lightning-scarred tree he'd noticed while exploring the ranch, stood a quarter-mile out, hidden by tall grass. Getting there unseen would be a challenge with Miller and Johnson patrolling. He moved to the bedroom, packing a small go-bag, the M1911, a flashlight, the artifacts secured in a Ziploc. The floorboard creaked as he retrieved them, each item a tether to a mystery he couldn't escape. The portfolio's weight reminded him of mission briefs in the army, orders that could change everything. The journal's pages whispered of betrayal, of men in power plotting in shadows. The flash drive, cold against his palm, was a Pandora's box. Open it and there'd be no going back. He slipped on a dark jacket, its pockets deep enough to conceal his gear, and checked the window. Johnson was near the barn, his flashlight beam cutting through the dark. Miller paced by the gate, his silhouette rigid. Marcus's plan was simple. Exit through the cellar, a storm door hidden by shrubs, and skirt the field's edge, using the terrain to stay low. He'd done it before, slipping past insurgent patrols in the desert, his heart steady despite the stakes. But this wasn't Kandahar, this was Wyoming, and the enemy wasn't a faceless militant but his own government or something worse. The cellar door groaned softly as he eased it open, the night air sharp with the scent of sage and pine. He crouched, moving silently, the split pine a jagged shadow against the starlit sky. His mind flashed to his last mission in Afghanistan, a night op gone wrong, his squad ambushed, his best friend, Ramirez, bleeding out in his arms. The memory clawed at him, but he shoved it down, focusing on the present. Ellen was his only lifeline, and 2 a.m. was approaching. At the pine, Marcus crouched, his breath shallow, the M1911 in hand. The ranch lay quiet, but the silence felt wrong, like the calm before an IED blast. Ellen's note burned in his mind. Walter trusted no one. Had Walter stood here, years ago, watching for threats? Had he known his secrets would drag a stranger, a broken veteran with nothing left, into a war he'd fought alone? Marcus gripped the pistol tighter, the artifacts heavy in his pocket. Whatever waited at 2 a.m., he'd face it not as the man who'd lost everything, but as the soldier who'd survived worse. At 2 a.m., Marcus slipped out through a bedroom window, M1911 tucked in his waistband, the artifacts in his pocket. The split pine loomed under a half-moon, its jagged trunk a scar from a lightning strike. Ellen emerged, no longer the folksy neighbor but a figure in tactical gear, night vision goggles raised, a silenced pistol holstered at her hip. "You weren't followed?" she whispered. "No. Agents are watching the house and barn," Marcus replied, his own training kicking in. She led him to an ATV hidden under camouflage netting. "I worked with Walter for 30 years, not as neighbors, as CIA colleagues. He was my handler in Project Looking Glass, a division tasked with documenting unchecked power." They sped through a ravine, her voice cutting through the engine's hum. Walter's Secret Service role gave him access to presidents. DOD was cover. His real work was CIA, collecting evidence of decisions made in shadows. At a clearing, she powered up a laptop from a waterproof case. 5 years ago, Walter uncovered Project Orion, a continuity of government program from the 50s that evolved into a shadow state. Operation Nightshade, 1963, authorized a nuclear strike protocol bypassing Congress. Nixon's transcripts discuss suspending elections during Watergate. That flash drive likely indexes Walter's archive. The laptop displayed a map of Orion's network, hidden facilities, personnel, a central hub in the Rockies. Walter found Orion's endgame. Operation Eclipse, a staged crisis, cyber attacks, infrastructure strikes, to justify martial law and permanent control. He died days later, officially a heart attack. Convenient, don't you think? A vehicle started at the ranch. "They've noticed you're gone," Ellen said, shutting the laptop. "We're heading to Walter's safe house, 40 miles west." She handed him a secure communicator. "If we're separated, activate this. Walter chose you, your combat record, your oath to the Constitution. You're his contingency plan." They rode cross-country, dodging satellite coverage Walter had mapped. The safe house, a cabin buried in a hillside, looked like a hunter's shack but hid a reinforced vault. Inside, climate-controlled units held duplicate archives, a comms center blinked with cutting-edge tech. Ellen showed plans for Orion's hub, a facility controlling military, emergency, and communication systems. Walter believed eclipse was imminent, triggered by a cyber attack and physical strikes to create chaos. A sealed letter from Walter awaited Marcus, its paper trembling in his hands. To my heir. Project Orion began as a safeguard for democracy but became a shadow state, answerable to no one. Operation Eclipse, their manufactured crisis, is months away. A cascading failure blamed on foreign enemies to activate emergency powers. 6 of 7 leaders are in the blue folder. The 7th, Vanguard, holds Eclipse's codes. Options. Deliver evidence to FBI Deputy Director Sarah Klein or Senator James Colton, risking Orion's assets in government. Or execute Protocol Dawn, mass exposure to media and allies, high risk. Vanguard's proof is where I began. Key. Your grandfather's birth date, 7 to 19. Trust your oath. Walter Sullivan. Ellen accessed Walter's database. Your grandfather, James Sullivan, was born July 19, 1939. Key is 7 to 19. Surveillance feeds showed Blackwood's team at the ranch, scanning with ground-penetrating radar. Marcus made his choice. I'll return to the ranch, find Vanguard's proof. You secure the evidence here. That's where they'll look for you, Ellen protested. Exactly, Marcus said. They expect me to run. Going back gives me the element of surprise and buys you time to prepare a fallback. Ellen reluctantly agreed, handing him a burner phone. Contact me in 24 hours or I assume you're compromised. Marcus Sullivan moved through the Wyoming wilderness like a phantom, his combat training guiding each silent step through ravines and dense forest. The 40-mile trek from Ellen Hayes's safe house had been grueling, his muscles aching under the weight of his pack, but his focus was razor-sharp. The artifacts, Operation Nightshade's portfolio, Nixon's transcripts, the Orion Index flash drive pressed against his thigh, a constant reminder of Walter Sullivan's legacy. His great-uncle's letter echoed in his mind. Vanguard's proof is where I began. Key. Your grandfather's birthdate, 7 to 19. The ranch, now a hive of Daniel Blackwood's DoD operation, held the final piece of the puzzle, and Marcus was determined to find it before Orion's shadow state could execute Operation Eclipse. Dawn had given way to mid-afternoon as he reached the ranch's outer boundary, crouching behind a granite outcrop overlooking Clearwater Valley. The Sullivan Ranch, once a derelict refuge, now bristled with activity. Blackwood's operation had escalated since Marcus's midnight escape. 6 black SUVs formed a perimeter, their engines idling. Technicians in hazmat suits swept the ground with radar wands, their movements methodical. Drones hummed overhead, their red lights blinking like predatory eyes. The barn, where Marcus had discovered Walter's secret chamber, was a fortress of floodlights and armed guards, its contents, decades of presidential secrets, being cataloged by a team in white coveralls. The house, Marcus's brief haven, stood under watch, its windows dark, his rusted pickup truck still parked by the porch, a silent witness to his arrival days ago. Marcus's pulse quickened, his combat instincts flaring. Getting to the house meant crossing 200 yards of open ground, evading thermal sensors, drones, and at least a dozen agents. The drainage culvert, a narrow concrete tunnel under the access road, was his only shot. A relic of the ranch's irrigation system, half buried and likely overlooked by Blackwood's sweep. He'd spotted it during his initial exploration, its entrance choked with weeds. But crawling through its tight confines would test his nerve, stirring memories of Afghanistan, insurgent tunnels, the claustrophobic dark, the ever-present threat of ambush. He adjusted the M1911 in his waistband, its weight grounding him, and checked his pack. Burner phone, knife, Walter's secure communicator, a small flashlight. The artifacts were secure in a waterproof pouch, their secrets too volatile to risk losing. Marcus closed his eyes, steadying his breath, but a flash of Kandahar intruded, crawling through a tunnel, dirt crumbling, his squad's whispers cut off by an IED's roar. His heart pounded, sweat beating despite the cool air. He shoved the memory down, focusing on Walter's words, trust your oath. The Constitution he'd sworn to defend was at stake, and he wouldn't break now. Marcus waited for the light to shift, mid-afternoon sun casting long shadows that would mask his approach. He moved low, belly crawling through tall grass, pausing when drones passed overhead. Their thermal sensors could spot a warm body, but the rocky terrain and his slow pace kept him invisible. The culvert's entrance lay 50 yards ahead, partially hidden by a tangle of sagebrush. As he neared a patrol, 2 agents with rifles passed within 20 feet, their radios crackling with updates. Sector 3 clear. Radars picking up anomalies near the barn. Marcus froze, his face pressed to the earth, the scent of dust and grass sharp. The agents moved on and he sprinted the final distance, diving into the sagebrush. The culvert's mouth was a dark maw, 3 feet wide, its concrete slick with moss and groundwater. He hesitated, the tunnel's confines triggering another flash. Afghanistan, his squad pinned down, the tunnel walls closing in as he dragged a wounded comrade to safety. His chest tightened, breath shallow, but he gripped the artifact's pouch, its edges digging into his palm. For Walter, he whispered and slid inside. The culvert was tighter than he'd expected, the walls grazing his shoulders, the air damp and heavy with mildew. He crawled on elbows and knees, the flashlight clenched in his teeth, its beam cutting through cobwebs and sill. Every few feet he paused, listening for pursuit or the hum of drones. The tunnel sloped downward, water pooling at its base, soaking his clothes. Memories clawed at him, Kandahar's tunnels, the metallic tang of blood, his medic's kit useless against a severed artery. He shoved them aside, focusing on the mission. Reach the house, find Vanguard's proof, get out. After 10 minutes, the culvert opened into a shallow ditch inside the ranch's perimeter, 30 yards from the house. Marcus emerged, mud-streaked and aching, and scanned the area. The barn's floodlights cast harsh glare, but the house was in shadow, its cellar storm door hidden by overgrown shrubs, a detail Blackwood's team had missed. He sprinted, using the pickup truck as cover, and reached the door, its rusted hinges yielding to his knife's leverage. Slipping inside, he descended into the cellar, the air cool and thick with the scent of earth and old wood. The cellar was a maze of crates and cobwebbed shelves, Walter's survivalist streak evident in neatly stacked supplies, canned food, water jugs, a generator. Marcus moved to the stairs, ascending to the house's main floor, his boots silent on the worn boards. The study where he'd first found Walter's journal was his target. Blackwood's team had ransacked it, papers strewn across the floor, but Marcus trusted Walter's precision. The clue, where I began, pointed to Walter's early career, likely his Secret Service days in the late 1950s, when he'd guarded Eisenhower and Kennedy. The key, Marcus's grandfather's birth date, July 19, 1939, suggested a code tied to Walter's meticulous habits. The study's 9 bookcases, each with 12 shelves, stood empty, their contents likely seized. But Marcus recalled Walter's order, books aligned by height, cans sorted by label, clothes by color. The man hid secrets in patterns. July 19th, 7th case, 19th shelf from the bottom. He ran his fingers along the wood, searching for irregularities. The panel felt solid, but a faint seam caught his nail. Pressing hard, he heard a click and the shelf slid inward, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside was a 1960s Bulova watch, its face etched with a presidential seal, an inscription on the back, to Vanguard, Sentinel of Order, 1963. Marcus's breath hitched. The watch was heavy, its craftsmanship hinting at significance beyond timekeeping. He pried open the back, revealing a microchip nestled beside a folded note in Walter's script, Vanguard's Eclipse orders, recorded Aspen Lodge, 2018. Proof secured. Trust sparingly. The chip was a speck of technology, yet it held the key to Orion's endgame, a conspiracy to dismantle democracy in 72 hours. Footsteps echoed in the hallway, heavy and deliberate. Marcus pocketed the watch, his hand on the M1911, but a voice cut through before he could draw. "I know you're here, Sullivan. Thermal tracked you through the culvert." Daniel Blackwood stepped into the doorway, alone, his silver hair catching the dim light. His posture was relaxed, hands visible, but his eyes were sharp, assessing. "Put the gun down. We need to talk." Marcus kept his hands raised, the M1911 still holstered. "You've got a lot of nerve calling this a talk, Blackwood. Your team's tearing my ranch apart." Blackwood's lips twitched, not quite a smile. "Your ranch holds secrets that could burn this country down. I was Walter's protege at DOD, Sullivan. He trained me, trusted me, until our paths diverged. He wanted disclosure, to tear the system open. I believed in reform from within, keeping the secret safe while fixing the rot." Marcus's mind raced, weighing Blackwood's words. The man's knowledge was too precise, dates, codenames, Walter's motives. Either he was genuine or he was Orion's cleanup crew, spinning a masterful lie. "That watch," Blackwood continued, nodding at Marcus's pocket, "identifies Vanguard General Nathan Pierce, chairman of the Joint Chiefs. Operation Eclipse starts in 72 hours, coordinated grid failures, attacks on cities, martial law to install Orion's rule. Pierce holds the codes to trigger it. Why should I trust you?" Marcus asked, his voice steady despite the adrenaline. You're DOD. For all I know, you're Vanguard, and this is a trap. Blackwood's gaze didn't waver. Because I've been protecting Walter's work. My orders were to destroy the archive, erase every trace. Instead, I preserved key pieces, misdirected my team to buy time. Eclipse is in motion, Atlanta and Phoenix outages last month were tests, synchronized to bypass security protocols. We need the chip to stop Pierce. Marcus's gut churned. The outages had been in the news, dismissed as technical glitches. But Blackwood's claim aligned with Walter's warnings of a staged crisis. Still, trust was a luxury he couldn't afford. If you're on my side, we do this my way, Marcus said. Ellen Hayes is part of this. We access the chip together with her present. She's got Walter's backups ready to release if we're compromised. Blackwood hesitated, then nodded. Fair. There's a derelict mill, 10 miles north, off the grid. We meet there, 0400 tomorrow. Bring Hayes, but no one else. He stepped back, hands still visible. Don't try to run, Sullivan. My team's orders are to contain you, alive, if possible. As Blackwood retreated, Marcus slipped out the study's window, his heart pounding. He needed to verify Blackwood's story before the rendezvous. Using the burner phone, he called Ellen, relaying the encounter in clipped tones. He says Pierce is Vanguard, claims he's protecting Walter's work. I've got the chip, but I don't trust him. Ellen's voice was taut. Blackwood's a wild card. Walter mentioned him brilliant, ambitious, but torn between loyalty and reform. I'll meet you at the mill, but we need leverage. Send me the outages he mentioned. I'll cross-check. Marcus retreated to the cellar, using a hidden nook to access the internet via Walter's encrypted satellite link. Tech forums buzzed with theories about the Atlanta and Phoenix outages. Identical security bypasses, no claimed responsibility. A whistleblower's post, quickly deleted, hinted at DOD involvement. Marcus sent the links to Ellen, then memorized the mill's coordinates, destroying the burner's SIM card as a precaution. He slipped back into the night, moving through the forest to avoid Blackwood's patrols, the watch and chip heavy in his pocket. The mill, a crumbling relic from Clearwater Valley's mining days, stood in a clearing ringed by pines, its roof half-collapsed, windows shattered. Marcus arrived at 0330, scouting the perimeter for traps. The M1911 was drawn, its weight steadying his nerves. Ellen's ATV emerged from the shadows, her tactical gear unchanged, a laptop case slung across her back. You're early, she said, her eyes scanning the trees. Good. Blackwood's not here yet. They took cover in the mill's boiler room, its rusted machinery offering concealment. Ellen set up her laptop, pulling up her analysis. The outages check out, she said, her voice low. DOD memos leaked on a dark web forum confirmed they were tests, Eclipse's dry run. Blackwood's telling the truth about that, but his motives? Walter never fully trusted him. Said he played both sides. Marcus gripped the watch, its inscription glinting in the laptop's glow. If he's double-crossing us, the chip's our only card. What's on it? We won't know until we access it, Ellen said, plugging the chip into a secure reader. Walter's encryption is military grade, but I've got his keys. The screen flickered, displaying a partial file, audio fragments, a 2018 recording from Aspen Lodge, Camp David. A voice calm, authoritative outlined Eclipse's timeline, grid failures in 5 cities, strikes on infrastructure, emergency powers activated by midnight, day 1. The name Pierce appeared in metadata tied to the Joint Chiefs. Headlights pierced the mill's broken windows. Blackwood's SUV pulled up and he stepped out alone, hands visible. Marcus and Ellen exchanged a glance, weapons ready. He's keeping his word so far, Marcus whispered. Let's hear him out. Blackwood entered, his silver hair stark against the dark. You've seen the chip? He asked, eyes on Marcus. Enough to know Pierce is Vanguard, Marcus replied. But you're not calling the shots. Convince us you're not Orion's cleanup crew. Blackwood produced a tablet displaying DOD memos mirroring Ellen's findings. These are my insurance, he said. Proof I've been undermining Eclipse from within. Pierce thinks I'm loyal, but I've delayed his orders, redirected resources. The chip's recording is our kill shot. It names Pierce and his council, their plans, their timelines. We get it to Sarah Klein, she can move before Eclipse launches. Ellen's skepticism was palpable. And what's your endgame, Blackwood? You expect us to believe you're risking your career out of principle. Blackwood's jaw tightened. Walter was my mentor. He saw the system's flaws but believed it could be fixed. I followed his lead until Orion grew too powerful. Eclipse isn't just a US threat, it's a model for global control. If we don't stop it here, it spreads. Marcus weighed the words, his instincts torn. Blackwood's evidence was compelling, but his polish, his ease, screamed operative. Yet, the chip's contents aligned with Walter's warnings and time was slipping 72 hours until Eclipse. "We're in," Marcus said, locking eyes with Ellen. "But we do this together. Klein gets the chip and we keep copies. If you cross us, Protocol Dawn goes live." Blackwood nodded, a flicker of respect in his gaze. "Agreed. Klein's in DC, secure line. We move now before Pierce tightens the net." As they left the mill, a fragile alliance formed, bound by necessity and Walter's legacy. Marcus clutched the watch, its weight a reminder of the oath he'd sworn, a soldier, a guardian, now a keeper of truths that could save or doom a nation. The Wyoming dusk cast long shadows as Marcus Sullivan, Ellen Hayes, and Daniel Blackwood converged on Blackwood's off-grid bunker, a repurposed silver mine carved into the rugged foothills of the Clearwater Valley. Shielded from satellite surveillance by lead-lined walls and advanced jammers, the bunker was a fortress of secrecy, its entrance hidden behind a rusted or chute. Inside, the air was cool and metallic, the hum of shielded tech, servers, encrypted comms, and monitors displaying global feeds, filling the space with a pulse of urgency. The microchip Marcus had retrieved from Walter's hidden watch lay on a steel table, its tiny surface holding the potential to unravel a conspiracy that threatened the nation's core. As Ellen connected it to a secure laptop, Marcus's heart pounded, the weight of his great-uncle Walter Sullivan's legacy pressing harder with each passing second. The laptop word, decrypting the chip's contents with a key Ellen had extracted from Walter's archive. A video file loaded, time-stamped August 12, 2018, labeled Aspen Lodge, Camp David. The screen flickered to life, revealing a dimly lit conference room, its oak-paneled walls adorned with maps and a single American flag. 7 figures sat around a table, their faces partially shadowed but their voices clear, chilling in their calm precision. Leading them was General Nathan Pierce, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, his baritone unmistakable as he outlined Operation Eclipse with the detachment of a man discussing logistics, not treason. Phase 1. Coordinated cyber attacks on power grids, Eastern Seaboard, Midwest, Texas. Pierce said, pointing to a digital map projected on the wall. Phase 2. Physical strikes on water treatment plants and transport hubs, minimal casualties to maintain public compliance. Phase 3. Emergency powers activated, Congress suspended, transition to stabilized governance under Orion's framework. A woman, identified by a dossier as a tech billionaire, interjected, casualty estimates are acceptable. Under 10,000, concentrated in urban centers to maximize fear. Another voice, a senator, added, the narrative is key, foreign cyber attacks, Chinese or Russian, to unify the public. Pierce nodded, his eyes cold. The president will be managed. If he resists, we have contingencies. Marcus's stomach churned, the recording a window into a betrayal so profound it shook his faith in the system he'd bled for. These weren't rogue operatives but pillars of power, military, industry, politics, plotting to dismantle democracy under the guise of salvation. Ellen's face was a mask of controlled fury, her fingers gripping the laptop's edge. Blackwood, pacing, muttered, Walter was right. They've been planning this for decades. The video ended, leaving a silence heavy with dread. Marcus broke it, his voice steady despite the rage simmering beneath. This is enough to bury them. Pierce, the others, they can't walk away from this. Ellen nodded, already pulling up schematics from Walter's archive. We can't just expose them. Eclipse is in motion, those test outages in Atlanta and Phoenix were rehearsals. We need to disrupt their command structure. She revealed a backdoor Walter had built into Orion's network, a hidden access point in their Rockies hub. I can deploy a worm to delay Eclipse's commands. It'll mimic normal operations, block destructive orders, and buy us 72 hours, maybe less if they detect it. Blackwood leaned in, his silver hair catching the bunker's fluorescent light. That's a start, but we need to neutralize Pierce. He's got backup codes, secondary channels. I can shadow him, block his moves, but it's high risk. He's got loyalists in the Pentagon. Marcus's mind raced. The artifacts from the ranch, Nightshade portfolio, Nixon's transcripts, the blue folder with 6 of Orion's leaders, burning in his memory. Then we hit them from all sides. I'll deliver the recording and the folder to Sarah Klein at the FBI, Senator James Colton, and Admiral Laura Hayes. They're clean, according to Walter. Evidence like this forces action, indictments, arrests. Ellen's eyes narrowed. You're assuming they'll move fast enough. Orion's got tendrils everywhere. DOJ, Secret Service, even FBI field offices. Klein's counterintelligence. But she's one woman. Colton's a reformer, but he's got enemies. Hayes is Joint Chiefs. Uncompromised. But she's military. Her reach is limited. Blackwood stopped pacing, his voice low. There's another problem. Protocol Dawn, Walter's mass exposure plan. If we go to Klein and Colton and they hesitate, or if Orion's assets block them, we lose our window. Dawn's a firestorm, but it guarantees the truth gets out. Marcus gripped the pocket constitution in his jacket, its worn edges grounding him. Dawn's a last resort. It could tear the country apart, riots, distrust, maybe worse. We try Klein, Colton, Hayes first. If they fail, we go nuclear. Ellen hesitated, then nodded. 72 hours. That's our window. I'll need 8 to code the worm and infiltrate an Orion access point. Marcus, you'll need Walter's credentials, his old Secret Service ID, CIA clearance codes to get past security with Klein and the others. Blackwood, you're on Pierce. One misstep and we're all dead. The plan crystallized, a covert operation born of desperation and precision. Marcus felt the weight of his past. 3 tours in Afghanistan, the Bronze Star for pulling wounded comrades from a kill zone, merge with this new fight. He wasn't just a veteran adrift. He was Walter's heir, chosen to guard the Republic's soul. The infiltration. Ellen's target was an Orion access point, a nondescript server farm 60 miles east, disguised as a telecom relay station. At midnight, she and Marcus approached on foot, having parked their ATV in a dry wash. Ellen's tactical gear was a second skin, her silenced pistol and lock-picking tools at the ready. Marcus, armed with the M1911 and a combat knife, felt the old rhythm of a mission. Move silent, stay sharp, trust your team. The server farm's perimeter was a chain-link fence topped with razor wire, patrolled by 2 guards and a drone sweeping with infrared. Ellen deployed a handheld jammer, its pulse scrambling the drone's sensors, sending it veering into the night. 30 seconds before they notice, she whispered, clipping the fence with wire cutters. They slipped through, crouching behind a generator humming with heat. The guards, alerted by the drone's failure, split to investigate, their radios crackling. Marcus's pulse spiked, but Ellen was already moving, a shadow darting to the server room's side door. She bypassed the keypad with a device from her pack, the lock clicking open in seconds. Inside, the room glowed with the blue light of server racks, their fans a constant drone. Ellen plugged her laptop into a terminal, her fingers flying as she navigated Orion's network. Walter's backdoor is still active, she muttered, lines of code scrolling across the screen. Deploying the worm now. It'll spread to their hub, block Eclipse's commands, and loop fake status reports to buy us time. Marcus stood guard, the M1911 raised, his eyes on the door. Footsteps approached, boots on gravel, a guard returning. Ellen, we've got company, he hissed. 10 seconds, she replied, her voice calm but tight. The worm's upload bar ticked to 98%. The door handle rattled, a key scraping the lock. Marcus braced, ready to fire, but Ellen yanked the cable free at 100%. Done. Go. They slipped out a rear exit, the guards' flashlights sweeping the room as they melted into the shadows. Alarms blared, but Ellen's jammer kept the drone offline, and they reached the ATV undetected. As they sped away, Marcus's chest loosened, the mission's success a flicker of hope. 72 hours? He asked. If we're lucky, Ellen said, her eyes on the horizon. Orion's techs are sharp. They'll spot the worm eventually. Marcus's next move was to deliver the evidence, a task requiring him to navigate a web of bureaucracy and suspicion. Using Walter's credentials, a Secret Service ID card and CIA clearance codes from the safe house, he arranged meetings with Sarah Klein, James Colton, and Laura Hayes. The credentials, though decades old, were backed by Walter's foresight. Bat channels still recognized his name, a ghost in the system. First was Sarah Klein, FBI Deputy Director of Counterintelligence based in Denver. Marcus met her at a nondescript coffee shop, its windows fogged with morning steam. Klein, a wiry woman in her 50s with a gaze that missed nothing, slid into the booth across from him. Walter Sullivan's nephew, she said, her tone neutral. His file said he had no family. He didn't, Marcus replied, sliding a USB with the Aspen Lodge recording and a copy of the blue folder across the table. But he left me this. General Nathan Pierce and 6 others planning to gut the Constitution. Operation Eclipse Cyber-Tax Martial Law. It's happening now. Klein's fingers paused on the USB, her eyes searching his. You're asking me to accuse the Joint Chiefs Chairman of treason based on a dead man's evidence. I'm asking you to listen to the recording, Marcus said, his voice steady. Walter trusted you. So do I. She pocketed the USB, her expression unreadable. If this is real, it's a nuclear bomb. I'll need 24 hours to verify, coordinate with DOJ. Stay reachable, Sullivan. And watch your back. Next was Senator James Colton, a grizzled reformer on the Senate Intelligence Committee, known for his dogged pursuit of government overreach. Marcus met him in a secure room at a Cheyenne hotel, Walter's credentials granting access past Capitol Police. Colton, his suit rumpled, his eyes bloodshot from late nights, scanned the blue folder's dossiers. Pierce, a senator, a tech mogul, this is a who's who of power, he said, his voice a low growl. You're sure about this? The recording doesn't lie, Marcus said, playing the Aspen Lodge audio on a secure device. Colton's face hardened as Pierce's voice filled the room, detailing Eclipse's horrors. My God, he muttered, rubbing his temples. I'll push for emergency hearings, but Orion's got allies in Congress. We'll need airtight proof. You've got it, Marcus said, handing over a duplicate USB. Admiral Hayes gets the same. Move fast, Senator. We've got 72 hours, maybe less. Admiral Laura Hayes, a Joint Chiefs member untainted by Orion, was the hardest to reach. Marcus met her at a military airfield outside Salt Lake City, her helicopter touching down under tight security. Hayes, tall and stern, her uniform crisp, took the evidence with a curt nod. Walter Sullivan was a legend in my father's time, she said. If he says Pierce is dirty, I believe it. But the Pentagon's a snake pit. I'll need to isolate Pierce's loyalists before we act. Do it quietly, Marcus urged, handing her the final USB. Pierce has backups. Blackwood's watching him, but we're on borrowed time. Hayes' eyes softened, a rare crack in her armor. You're like Walter, Sullivan. Stubborn, principled. Stay alive long enough to see this through. While Marcus delivered the evidence, Blackwood shadowed Pierce in Washington, D.C., using his DoD clearance to monitor the general's movements. Pierce, unaware of the worm, met with Orion operatives in a Georgetown safe house, issuing orders for Eclipse's next phase. Blackwood, disguised as a maintenance worker, planted trackers on their vehicles, relaying data to Ellen. His reports were grim. Pierce was accelerating the timeline, sensing a breach. Back at the bunker, Ellen monitored the worm's performance, her laptop displaying Orion's network traffic. The worm was holding, but anomalies were spiking. Orion's techs were probing for intrusions. We've got 48 hours, tops, she told Marcus via secure comms. Pierce is paranoid. He's checking secondary channels. Marcus, now back in Wyoming, coordinated with Klein, Colton, and Hayes. Klein's verification confirmed the recording's authenticity, triggering sealed indictments from a trusted DOJ task force. Colton secured a classified Senate session presenting the evidence to a select committee, their faces pale as the recording played. Hayes mobilized a Marine unit loyal to her, isolating Pierce's Pentagon allies under the guise of a security drill. The final blow came at 3 a.m., 48 hours after the worm's deployment. Pierce, cornered in his Arlington office, attempted to activate Eclipse's backup codes via a secure terminal. Ellen's worm, anticipating the move, corrupted the codes, locking him out. Hayes's Marines stormed the office, detaining Pierce and his aides. Simultaneous raids, coordinated by Klein, swept up Orion's 6 other leaders, a senator in D.C., a tech billionaire in Silicon Valley, intelligence chiefs in Langley, a general in Norfolk, a contractor in Dallas.